I want to get high so I can get down, and then I can be your clown. No, I'm just kidding. I don't I I wish I could make songs, but for me it's just so boring. It's easier to memorize a song than it is to make a song for me. I mean, I guess if I just put down the chording progressions and then had the lyrics, I could probably make my own song. But the thing is remembering the melody. I could, I could, I could just, you know, do it several times, and I guess I could get it. I would have it, and I'd have the song. Thing is to try to remember the song, and then once you've made the song, and then people want you to sing it all the time, and then you're just like, oh, I hate this song. So then there's no point in making a song in the first place. I'd rather other people have that burden than have it myself. And plus, I don't have any real reason to make money, and making songs is not particularly all that interesting to me. I've tried to do it a lot the slow way, where you're sitting there with a keyboard and I've tried to do it just by the thing is the recording equipment is linear. People call it non-linear, but bullshit is linear. The only way you're going to get me to make a song is if you can create a modular, non-linear format that's two-dimensional, that you can move your song parts around. So you would have kind of like you're dealing with little slivers of tape, and then you could have little arrows that says, okay, this part starts out and then it goes to this part, and then that part goes to this part, and this part goes to that part. And if you can do that, then, I mean, some people would say, well, you could do that and create it, make it like just move them around in a linear format, like you do with a, a a scoring system. And I say, no, fuck no. I want something that's modular, like I could actually um, I could actually adjust tempos, you know. You can't do that with that. I mean, I could do stuff like I could adjust the speed of things and then let the computer figure out how to make that work. You see, and then that way it would be better than your linear format, because your linear format, um, the linear format, you could turn it into a linear format, but it'd be better than a linear format because you could start out working with it in a kind of a mess of a graph. You could create a graph, and then if you need a linear format of that, then you could turn it into, it would be what's called a projection. Um, People in the object oriented programming world call this views, different views on the same thing. And so if you need a view that makes sense for musicians that looks like a scoring system, then do that. But for somebody who's going to be writing a song, they're not going to be wanting to mess around with the scoring one dimensional system. It's one dimensional because you're moving through time. It may be two dimensional in that you're layering things, but that's not the same thing. What I'm talking about is a graphing system where you can do several different recordings, okay, and just put them out there somewhere and say, well, what if I take this guy and move it with that guy and move with this guy? I mean, have this guy go to that guy to go to that guy, and see they're already arranged. You don't have to put them end to end on the tracking system. You don't have to layer them. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You just orient your pieces of tape, or your recordings, and you do the same thing with whatever you would do on the keyboard. Now, in itself, each individual piece could be like a one-dimensional recording layering system, but the pieces themselves are like modules, and then you could have pieces that are modifiers, or like effects systems. And so you could say, I want this. You could have a view on that, and the view would be, okay, I want to go to the effects view. And so the effects view would show the same modules out there, but then you could have circles around them, or you could have a graph where you put things in circles and you colorize them, and that would be your effects color. And so you could say, okay, this sets of things right here is going to have this effect. This thing right here is going to have that effect. You could do so much stuff by just having different views, or different perspectives on the same scoring system. And then that way, you're not stuck in this one-dimensional layering format where you're having to go into things and adjusting effects and setting, you could have different views on the things, and depending on what view is comfortable for you, you use that. And different people could do different things. And then if you want something that makes sense for you, you can use the one-dimensional layering format. But that is what it is. It's a one-dimensional. It's not two-dimensional. You're layering a bunch of one-dimensional things. There's no two dimensions to sound. It's one-dimensional. It goes through time. It doesn't. You don't. The only way you have multiple dimensionals with sound is by layering the sound. That's the reason why it's a one-dimensional format. But you need 2 dimensions, and you need 3 dimensions and multiple dimensions in order to organize things, to make it easy to organize things without having to have organization. There are people that would prefer to be messy. There would be people that would prefer not to remember which comes first. There would be people that would prefer not to remember how many times this thing goes. And the thing is that whenever I think about writing a song, I would rather just have, okay, this is 1 verse, 2 verse, 3 verse. I'd rather be able to create 7 or 8 or 9 verses, but not have to put them out in a one-dimensional format. I would rather just have them out here and say, well, wouldn't it be good to have 1, 3, and 7, and then put 7 here, put 7 first, then this, and then that, So you could put little tabs on them and say, okay, this green tab here goes, there's 1, 2, and 3. So I click on them and I go 1, 2, and 3. And so those come in those order. And then I said, well, I need a bridge here. So between 2 and 3, there's a bridge. And the bridge is this, And there wouldn't be any timing. There'd just be chordings. You could have timing if you wanted. You could say, well, this is going to last this certain amount of time. then you could try it out, have it play, and then you can say, no, how about have number two be in, have it be a swing. So make number two a swing, and one's going to be regular time, two's going to be a swing, and then three's going to be in the style of a country tune. You know, see, those are that's the kind of thinking that would permit you to put in AI and other kinds of things, and then you just don't have, you're just not stuck in the one-dimensional layered format. And people say that's not linear, but fuck no, that is linear. That is linear out the wazoo. Non-linear doesn't it's not non-linear, it's linear. You're moving stuff through time. That may seem two-dimensional, but still linear. To be not truly non-linear is to not use a linear format to organize your junk. You're going to be constrained to a linear format when you play it out, but when you're organizing it, it can be two-dimensional. It can be three-dimensional. It can be fourth-dimensional. It can be five-dimensional. You can have as many dimensions as you want, because you can provide different views on the content. You can do things, and you can create modifications. Like I could say, I'm going to do this. Number one is going to be, I'm going to score it this way, and number two is going to be modified by number one. And number two, I'm going to write some music there, and so number one's going to be arpeggiating on top of number two, and so see, and but if I wanted to, I could flip that. I could say two is modulating, number two is arpeggiating number one, you know, or number one is arpeggiating number two, and so I'm using the notes from one to create a trill or something. And do it in a two-dimensional format, because then you can rearrange things really super fast rather than having to move them around on a on a on a tape, on a layered tape. The only reason why they use that format is because it makes sense to musicians. But the thing is that that's musicians. I'm not a musician. I would rather do something that adjusts to the way I think about things and is not a tape format, um, because that's just, no matter how you do it, it's still limiting you. Okay, um, to have it in that one-dimensional format. The reason why I say one-dimensional is it's not even one-dimensional; it's half-dimensional, because you can go back through time, but when you play sound out, it goes in one direction. It doesn't come back. It goes in one direction. You know, you could think that you're going backward if you went backward, but you're still going one direction. Okay, and now we're talking about that group One Direction, but that's sound, is it's just it's a half-dimensional thing. But when you want to organize things, you don't want to work in half dimension. You want to work in full two or three dimensions. You want to have options. Let me put it that way too. Now, I would write my own music software if I could do that. I'm not that good a programmer. Um, I have the idea, and I'd rather some other musician programmer do it. But I'll put the idea out so you can think about it, you know. And some people would say, well, that's kind of like Buzz Tools or Sunvox, or on I think that's what it's called, Sunvox, and on the iPad. It's kind of like that, but it's not that. It's really for organizing songs with lyrics and things like that. It has to be starting out, it can't be complex. It has to be starting out the easiest way of putting songs together, the quickest, faster than you can do in a linear or non or in a one dimensional or a half dimensional format. It needs to be two, three, four dimensions. But start out being two dimensional. Two dimensional is simple. Um, graph like, two dimensional. You make your verses. Your verses might contain words. You might go into the verses and work with the dimensions of the words and specify which things come in what order. Even the words, what order they come, how long they last, you know, and then play them out, and then you jump out, and then you can play the verse, the different verses, and then you might give it a chord, give it chording inside of that. I don't know, or maybe you just record for a block what it's supposed to be, and then the software figures out what the notes are, and then you can throw in some AI to figure out different ways of seeing that, or you have a special thing where you started out playing and you can tap through the notes like you can on an old Casio keyboard where you can record the notes and then you could tap out how fast it plays those notes just by tapping a key. Okay, but the notes are the notes are specified but not the durations, and so you make the lyric, and uh, each word might have a note, maybe it doesn't have a note, maybe it has multiple notes, but you start out making your verse, or you make your notes. So there's multiple ways that you could do this, but you have to have all those options of doing stuff like that. And you can't do that in your one dimensional format. Don't even use the one dimensional format. Because if you use the one dimensional format, you're going to be like everybody else. You got to do something that's not like anything that's been done before, right? And there are people that always say, well, you could do it that way. No, don't do it that way. Do it in a graph style, in a graph format, with the option to go into multiple dimensions and offer different views, um, if you need to, on certain things. And if you don't really understand what I'm talking about, we can sit around and work through it, or I could do it. Uh, but the thing is it would make making songs so much faster for people that just don't work like musicians do in a linear format, in a half dimensional format. The reason why I say it's half dimensional and I break it down like that is because it's so disgusting to me how hard it is for me to create songs or to create lyrical songs. And it's such a waste of time to do it the way musicians do, by having to play through different type of things. For me, it would be so much better if I could just separate the notes from the lyrics from all that, and then be able to make each thing separate, but then bring them together with something else. See, so I would call the program, if it was to be named something, I would call it um, musical salad, or the salad format. Because it'd be like throwing in croutons and throwing in your dressing, and so each one of those things are things you throw in the salad, but you don't eat a salad in any particular way, do you? You have a choice. You have your tomatoes. You put your fork in there and you eat the tomatoes and you eat the croutons, and it depends on what you want to go for. If you all had it there, you could make it. It could be it could be an instrument that you play, or it could be a way of organizing your song. The whole graph itself could be an instrument, but that's just a different way of using the graph. The graph could be used to organize the orderings in which things go. Um, you could have an interface on the graph. You see, the thing is to not go to the linear format, to the one-dimensional view, to keep things in the graph. And if people want a one or a half dimensional view, they can see that, but keep things in the graph. Because once you go to a linear format, it's going to limit what you can do in terms of the interface. It's going to limit what you can do in the interface. And so trying to keep things in a disorganized, with the possibility of being organized, and disorganized format, and letting the AI and stuff like that to organize it rather than you have to do it yourself. So it would be kind of a lazy person's music program. And lazy is not a problem. That's what they tell us in computer programming. To try to design programs lazily, that means that you only do what you must do. You don't do anything more. And so that sounds like you're going to the linear format, but you can do that two-dimensionally and still be simple. And that is that you don't have to do all the many layers of different things. You can do something very simple, which would be just taking a bunch of linear clips and putting them out as blocks on the screen, and then just putting arrows to them to show the orientation of those clips. But if you need to rearrange that, you just rearrange the arrows. You don't rearrange the clips. The clips stay where they are. See what I'm saying? Because the orientation should never constrain where the stuff is. Because if you do that, then you're going to have different scores, and that's pointless. What if you wanted to create a sequencer that adjusts the orientation of those clips? Create a song that adjusts the orientation of the clips over time. Still leave the clips where they are. You're just redefining which clip goes before what clip by adjusting an arrow. And you see, you start here and you go did, and then I can change it this way and you start here and you go did. You know, there are still going to be those musicians that can say, "Oh, I can do this in my program," I do it like that. But the thing is that then you're arranging things linearly, and that's not the same thing.